Hello, guys. Welcome back to the Uncensored Critic podcast. Thank you, as always, for tuning in. It means the world. Thank you very, very much. And today we welcome along a brilliant actor and also kind of a sort of leader in a very big movement with the new Actors Centre recently, and that is Kate Maravan. Is that right, Maravan?
That is right, indeed.
Perfect. Yeah, we're off to a good start. I often mispronounce people's names on here. It's a common theme. Anyway, so let's take a moment to introduce Kate and her work. So Kate is an actress, writer, and teacher who graduated from RADA, which is the Royal Academy of Dramatic Art, and her work can be seen across theatres, the BBC, Channel 4, as well as in classes at ArtSed, LAMDA, Rutgers Uni, the Globe, National Opera Studio, and for the Actors Centre. Her acting credits include Echo at the Royal Court, the Old House for the RADA Festival in Camden Fringe, which is her own one-woman show, opening Skinner's Box, which was devised by the Improbable Theatre company, written by Lee Simpson, which performed at the Northern Stage, West Yorkshire Playhouse, and Bristol Old Vic. One Cold Dark Night at the Bush Theatre, and Stone Circle, directed by Matthew Dunster. For film, she has Six Underground, directed by Michael Bay. Is that Michael Bay is in Transformers, Michael Bay?
It is indeed, yes.
Wow, that's amazing. Flawless, directed by Michael Radford, and Seven Lucky Gods, which she was nominated for Best Supporting Actress at the Milan International Film Festival, and she is currently developing her new show, Murmurations. In 1997, she met Scott Williams and discovered the Meisner technique, and now teaches it across the UK and internationally. Her practice across acting, writing, and teaching is in her own words, called present performance. And if that's not enough, she's also behind, as I just mentioned now, behind the regeneration of the new Actors Centre, building it back from dire straits into the drama school, with a brilliant drama school that it is. But more on that in just a moment. Kate, welcome.
Thank you very much. Nice to be here.
How are you?
I'm good, thank you. I'm sitting in front of a very sunny window, so I'm enjoying the sunshine.
Yes, the sun of the UK. We enjoy it as much as we can, don't we?
We do indeed. Get it where you can.
Indeed, indeed. So we start at the beginning. So in your case, Kate, where did it come from? The love of acting, writing, directing, being in this business. Where did it come from?
Well, it's in my family. So both my grandparents on my dad's side were actors. And although I sadly never met them because they died before I was born, my dad wasn't an actor, but he was a defense barrister, a criminal defense barrister, and was, I would say, quite a performer himself, even if he wasn't acting professionally. He was extremely good communicator. And I suppose when I was little, I used to go to a kind of rather eccentric dancing school, and we had once a year there would be a charity event for the NSPCC, and we used to dance on the stage at Drury Lane Theatre. And that was a kind of huge excitement and the feeling of being on that stage. And I think then from very little, really, I just wanted to be an actor. And so they didn't do drama at A level or GCSE at my school. So I did English and drama at uni, and then was very lucky to be able to go to drama school as well in the days of grants and all the rest of it.
Oh, you lucky thing. You're lucky.
So yeah, I'm really lucky, really seriously lucky, given that I work in drama schools now and the amount of money kids have to pay on, for loans and all the rest of it. It's terrific. So I think it was kind of in the blood, in the family. Both my older and younger brother were actors. They both now work in communications training, but they were actors. So it's a very much a kind of family thing. And I'm still going.
Yeah, that's good to know. It's good to know. Keep it going, man. Keep that bug alive. And which university? Which university did you go to?
I went to UEA, University of East Anglia, and actually read English with a kind of drama subsidiary and sort of like a minor subject, which was good because you got all the kind of practical stuff, and so you could do all the shows, but I didn't have to do the theory stuff, and I really liked English literature, so that was good.
Yeah.
And then I was going to do a post-grad course, and sort of rather jokingly said, well, if I got into RADA, which was another 3 years, couldn't really turn that down, and I was in a very fortunate position to be able to do that, and got in, and so I ended up doing 3 years at uni and then 3 years at RADA, so it was quite a long bit of higher education.
Yeah, 6 years of higher
6
education.
years, yeah.
Wow. But by the end of that, you're probably thinking, I am never ever doing student life ever again.
Well, I think what it was actually was it was just such a shock coming out. I mean, obviously university was a lot freer, many less hours, RADA was like going back to a kind of school timetable, but coming out and having that sense of no structure and no no place to be if you were in your periods of unemployment. That was a big shock to the system. And that's something that I try and talk to my students about in terms of how to kind of look after themselves and how to remain feeling creative and artistic in, very often challenging circumstances.
Yeah, and I think that it's also a thing where English literature and everything, it's all part of the same kind of beast, isn't it? It all feeds into the drama process, and scripted, like you talk about text analysis and everything. I think that could be like an early good sign for directing as well, because you see how these great authors, how it all fits together, and yet that's why their stories become so memorable. And you think, okay, how can I write or direct a story like that? Was that ever in your mind at university?
It's a very good point. I don't think so. Funnily enough, my writing and directing have very much kind of evolved through necessity, really. I think when I left RADA, and as I've just alluded to, had a very challenging first kind of year of the reality. I mean, I actually worked quite a bit looking back, but from my point of view, because I wasn't in permanent employment, the periods of unemployment felt very challenging. And a friend of mine who'd trained at Lecoq in Paris, we'd been at UEA together, and we just said we've got to do something because we're sort of going up the walls. So we started to write, and I didn't really have aspirations at UEA to write, but as you said, I'm sure all of the things that I studied and the literature that I studied, I'm sure it was influencing me in some way, but it wasn't a conscious choice. I think the writing kind of came out of, right, I need to create something. I need to take some kind of creative control over these kind of long days that I'm sitting around watching daytime telly. Or, I mean, in those days as well, most of us, and again, this isn't available to young actors now, but we would sign on. You could get benefits, you could get help through the periods of unemployment.
Yeah, yeah.
I'm not sure how healthy that was in terms of, not having something to actively do, but it made you at least available to do some artistic pursuit. So my friend and I started to write, and then it was quite interesting. We've quite quickly ended up writing for some stuff on television. So we ended up writing two things for Channel 4, something for the BBC, and it was one of those odd situations where I had no attachment to being a writer. I had no aspiration necessarily to be a writer, so I had no tension or pressure around it. It was almost like, well, we'll just have a go, and then found ourselves in meetings with quite sort of big producers and film, and it really made me think at the time, I'm so attached to being an actor, so everything is so anxious making if I do or don't get work. Whereas writing was a bit like, well, we'll see. And from that, so it was trying to learn how to kind of apply some of that non-attachment to the acting. I don't think I succeeded very well, but so we wrote together for about 5 years, and then for one reason or another we went our separate ways, but we're still very good mates. We still sort of do stuff together now, and we did a theatre piece together as well. So the writing, yeah, so going back to your question, I'm sure the uni degree influenced, but it was a surprise to me that I've ended up teaching writing and directing. That was never part of the plan.
It's funny how these things work, isn't it? But it's always there. So yeah, you went to RADA as well. How was 3 years of RADA?
It was great. I think, I mean, it was great, and I'm incredibly grateful that I got the opportunity to do that. I think it was sort of in an interesting transitional phase between when the repertory system was up in place. When I went to RADA, that had already stopped. So previously, a lot of young actors would go through drama school and then would go straight into some form of repertory apprenticeshiping, really. So they'd go up to a theatre and they'd do, 6 months, and they'd do loads of shows. And it was a way of cutting their teeth. And that had already kind of was being phased out. And I think, so RADA was sort of sitting somewhere between something not old school in the sense that it was very traditional, but in the sense that it was almost catering for an industry that was already changing. I think now, I mean, all drama schools now are having to adapt to the current market, whatever. So there was a traditional to it and I think I realized, but this has taken me a certain amount of time. I realized that I thought of myself, or I had placed myself in a more traditional sort of classical actress kind of role. I sort of saw myself coming out of RADA and possibly being seen by the RSC or the National or those kind of pathways. neither of which happened. And I have sort of understood through time that I'm not perhaps as conventional in terms of what I enjoy, what I want to express, what I want to kind of see, all those things. And I now look back and think there was a slight tension between wanting to sort of conform to the kind of idea of being a RADA actress and what that meant, and then that coming up against perhaps a desire for something slightly different and not being able to articulate that at the time, but having a more clarity as time went on. But I made some good friends, and it was had some great teachers. I'm in touch still with my voice teacher, and yeah, it was an incredible experience. But it wasn't perfect. I'll put it that way. And there was quite a lot of, I think, part of what's influenced me as a teacher. There's quite a lot of ego attached to the teaching. So the teachers became almost guru-like, and you had to please them, and you either pleased them or you disappointed them. And for me, that for me is a real issue in terms of acting teaching and the kind of So that was something. It was a good lesson what not to do.
I think you said you mentioned Jack Lecoq there already. I've had a few people on here who trained in Paris at that prestigious school, and one in particular. I think was it one or two? I definitely know one of them did. One of them was my movement teacher at GSA, SABS, or Sabina Nethercliffe. I think it's Sabina. I don't know. She's listening. Just whichever one it is, you know who you are. But she talked about how Lecoq was one of those kind of stone-faced kind of teachers, and like you said there, he either loved you or he was disappointed with what you're doing. Like they would do a thing for him and they would just put all this work in and they would go, what do you think? And he'll go, well, I've seen better. I think my nan could do better than that. But and I'm pretty sure I asked her at one point, was there anything did he say anything positive at all? And then she would go, oh yeah, he did. Sometimes he would look at you and you'd do something and he'd go, okay. It's like that's like the best you got. There was nothing. That was in some ways you could see it as a huge achievement because you made him happy, and it was a very hard man to please by the sound of things. But did you have that as well? Like sometimes teachers.
I did, and it's funny listening to that. I have that sort of makes my skin crawl because I mean I don't know. I was never at Lecoq, and so I can't sort of. But I'm not a fan of that sense of. You're shit. And then if you manage to do something and you get a sort of a little smile or a kind of thumbs up, and then you're so high with the excitement because someone's kind of told you were good. And it wasn't quite as extreme as that, but we had a very sort of well-known teacher, and she in many ways she was great, but it was that thing of you'd walk through into the space, that's shit, get out, and I, as a teacher and having been a teacher for a long time, I do not believe, and this is horses for courses. People believe differently, and students respond to different ways of teaching. But I do not believe that frightening people or making people very attached to try and get praise or affirmation from a very difficult to please teacher conducive to creative expression. I think it creates fear, it creates hierarchy, it creates a sense of low self-esteem.
Yeah.
And ultimately, if what you're trying to do is teach people to be as expressively free, available, open, playful, all the things that make a good actor, if you're terrifying them or getting them caught in some kind of expectation game, for me, it's a real trap. And I see it and have seen it a lot. And this idea that, and there's a lot of, I didn't work with Meisner, and when we end up talking more about Meisner, I'm certainly not a purist. I'm not a pure Meisner teacher at all. And who I was taught by wasn't particularly 100% purist. That sense of sort of getting it right, and being kind of no, don't do that. No. That for me, and again, I stress for me and for, I think perhaps the people that are interested in working with me, I don't want to create that kind of environment. I find it, for me, it sort of speaks more about the teacher and their kind of need to be sort of in charge in a way.
Yeah, no, absolutely. No, I remember doing one of those Shakespeare days at RADA. I think it was a few years ago now, and you could go along for the day and do like a 1 day masterclass. And I think one of them was one of them was a Meisner one actually, and I was taught by this guy. I can't remember his name, but he was quite a tall. He was quite a Scottish guy, had this long ginger beard and everything, and whoever he was, yeah, he was, he was brilliant. I remember it was, yeah, I can't remember his bloody name, but if you're, yeah, I need to look him up. But I remember I did one of these Shakespeare things, and I did a monologue from the Scottish play, where it's this a dagger I see before me. And I'll be perfectly honest, at the time, I didn't really know what I was doing. Because I just thought actors just learnt the words and that was it. That's all you had to do. Of course, now I realise there's much more to it than that. But I did it, and the girl who ran the class, pretty much in front of the whole group, just absolutely tore me to pieces. And I just said, no, he's not this, he's not that, he's not this, he's not that. And, I just walked out of that workshop. I was crushed. I was absolutely crushed, and I just thought, fucking hell, what am I doing? Have I been shit this whole time? It was fairly brutal, And yeah,
I don't understand the point of it. I mean, if you've paid to go and learn something, and all someone says is what's wrong,
yeah,
it's incumbent on the person teaching to help you to do something different. And also, I don't know. As I said, I look. Some people respond to that kind of I don't know what I was going to say, brutal, but that kind of slightly more kind of right on the nose, no, and maybe that works for them, and it gives them a feeling of kind of adrenalized kind of thing. In my experience, both as an actor in training establishments, but also watching hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of students over the years, shaming people and making people feel like they're shit
doesn't work.
It doesn't work, because all someone does is walk out the room feeling, as you just said yourself, feeling, oh my God, am I deluded? Can I even do this? Yeah. And I also, all of us, there isn't one of us that's got it totally down. Every actor is always there's always potential for growth. And so this idea that there is a sort of gold standard that you've got to hit, and if you're not hitting it, you can't do it. I mean, constructive criticism, don't get me right, challenging someone, inviting them, helping them to do better. Of course, it's not just about saying to people, you're great, you're great. If they're not doing something great, it's not about falsely supporting them, but it's about honouring that they've showed up, honouring that they're standing up in front of a group of people, honouring that they're doing something vulnerable, and working with that and seeing, right, well, how can we evolve that? How can we help you to actually understand this speech more, or what's going on in these circumstances, or what this person's feeling, or whatever, what all the things. So yeah, I've witnessed certain Meisner environments where teachers have stormed out the rooms, and people, students have had to talk about their personal material and their trauma. And for me, again, I stress, for me, it's not where I sit, and it's not what I'd feel very uncomfortable in that. Maybe when I was first out of RADA, I'd have kind of lapped it up. I don't know, because I would have thought this is what you need to do to be a really good actor. And increasingly, I realise it's not.
No, yeah, I know. All this emotional recall stuff, it's harmful. It's dangerous.
I think it can be. I mean, I think if you can use it in a way that doesn't hurt you, and it's a helpful way to fast track into emotion. I mean, sometimes, I've had to do that on a sort of telly job where they say, and now you're going to cry, and you think, oh my God, the script doesn't warrant it, but I'll do a bit of emotional recall. But I think using it exclusively and taking yourself into traumatized places and re-traumatizing yourself, that doesn't help you become a good actor anyway, because what happens is you over-involve yourself in the kind of feelings, and you lose the connection in the moment. So
it's I think you're right. It's just use it up to a point. We all know how that feeling of that feeling of like frustration of like, oh, remember that document to take to that meeting, or that piece of paper you've got to bring with you. Then you get to the meeting, and then you see the document in your mind, and it's still on your table at home, and you're like that sort of thing. That's fine. We remember that feeling of frustration, like, oh no, or something like that. But like remembering a time in your life which really was really painful for you, and you've dealt with it. You don't want to. I've now realized that you don't want to go back into stuff like that, and the risk of re-traumatizing yourself, because it's not worth it, and it's harmful, you know. And I think now practices are much better at helping you get there without, you know, making you feel incredibly uncomfortable or going to places you don't want to go to anymore. Some people are more willing to go to there than others, but obviously everyone has a limit, you know. But but I remember, funny enough, that same lady who tore me to pieces in that RADA workshop, when was it a couple of years later? Anyway, one of the two. About a year later, I went back to do another course there at RADA. I thought, right, I'll go back and I'll do another one. I need to do some acting again, because at uni it was all very, very academic. I had a very love-hate relationship with my time there. But I remember going there, and I walked in the room, and there she was, and I thought,
oh no,
oh great, okay. I thought, here we go again. Okay, Shakespeare workshop. Okay, I just remember thinking to myself, okay, just treat it as a life experience. Come on, just let's just go in. And I thought, actually, it's been a while. Maybe she won't remember me. Maybe she won't remember me at all. But she bloody did. And I walked in, and I thought, okay, all right. And she went, Oliver, have I seen you before? You look familiar. I said, yeah, I did. Yeah, you did. I think I did a piece of the Scottish play for you. She went, oh yes, yeah. Did I slate you for it? I went, yeah, you did, yeah. And I remember she went, good, that means you'll be better today. And I thought at the time, I thought, oh, that's really funny. Now I'm like,
yeah, that, I mean, you know, that, well, anyway, but you know, because I don't want to cast aspersions on other teachers, but that for me, it says more about her than it says about you. Do you know what I mean? It's more about, if I shout at you or tell you you're shit, you'll be better. Well, you've given no tools for the person to be better. You've just told them be better. I mean, don't be shit is not a
doesn't
good
help.
instruction.
No. Sometimes, you know, my teachers at GSA recently were brilliant. Say if someone's done something that wasn't like if still early stages or the lines are not quite there yet, they go, okay, well, it's a good start. You know, it's a good start. You know, there's more to be done, but you know, you're on the right track. You know, it's going well, and that motivates you to do better, because you want to be motivated. Not saying that means you'll be better today. It's like, yeah,
Of course it is, but it's like anything, and I'm not infantilizing actors, because you know, but in terms of a child starting to learn something, I mean, this could be across the board. This could be athletes, you know, this anyone learning anything, sewing, you know, whatever, saxophone, whatever. But if you say to someone, but when they play their first note, oh my God, that's shit. How does then a person feel encouraged to try again? Because we have enough of an inner critic as actors that tell ourselves we're shit. So to then have that reflected out, it's, as I said, it's not about falsely bigging people up and being just nice, because if people need help and work, but also one of the things that I feel very strongly about as a teacher is you can't give feedback to a student without helping them facilitate those changes. You can't say you need to be more confident, you need to be more in your masculine, you need to be more vulnerable. Anyway, go away and do that. It's like, well, if people could do that, they would be doing it. So there has to be then an understanding. So here we are as a team to help facilitate the things that we think you need more of, in a way. Left to your own devices with feedback as an actor is just like, you don't know how to do it. Sometimes you might go, okay, now I get that and I know how to put that into practice. But sometimes it can feel nebulous or theoretical, or you don't understand the practical tools. So I think it's up to teachers not just to say someone needs more of this, or they're crap at that or good at that. You know, I remember being at RADA and with this woman who was the sort of guru. I mean, I say she was the sort of guru because she sort of was. And I remember we used to have to come in on Saturday morning. We do these relentless improvisational exercises based on Uta Hagen's Respect for Acting. And I remember doing one with this fellow student, and having been told I was, you know, shit, get off, and then it really worked. And she was like, you got it, that was fantastic. And we were like high as kites. And then I remember thinking, what is it that we did that was right? Now, in retrospect, I look back and I now know what we did because of the Meisner work I do. We were in connection, we were in flow, we were in the moment, we were allowing impulses to express. Everything was happening moment to moment. And it's easy now to look back and go, why it worked. But at the time, we were just high because we got praise from the Almighty, you know. And what we didn't really understand was what we'd done to what we done. So in a sense, you didn't know anymore when you walked on and you told you were shit or you told you were great. You were like, I don't know what I'm doing, but I'm glad I got a good one today. Do you know what I mean? So I think again, it's very difficult to be students in environments where you feel like you're wanting to impress and please, or that, you know, you're getting to. I was once told my emotional life was from the neck up. And that stuck with me for years. And what I realized was I was in a state, it was not true, but I was in, and not true at all, actually, but I was in a state of such fear and tension that I couldn't feel a bloody thing. So no wonder my emotional life was from here to here, because here was completely blocked off with kind of trying to get it right, you know.
Yeah, yeah. And also I think, you know, thankfully we have moved on since those days, you know, and I think people actually encourage people to do their best and they walk away safe. You walk away from a class and you think, oh, I didn't do great today, but you know, you still, or rehearsal, and you think, yeah, I don't know, it just wasn't happening today for some reason. But it's up to the directors, teachers to say, look, we all have our moments and it's fine, you know, but you know, you're here for a reason because you auditioned and we loved what you did and you can do it. So now just go away, have a good rest, and come back and try again tomorrow. It's just some days, some days does happen, some days doesn't. Remember that at the end of the day, we're all human beings. End of the day, we're not robots, thankfully.
No, we're not acting machines that you press a button.
No.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
And I think, I was helped into drama school by a brilliant acting teacher called Katie Heath, who'd done a lot of stuff at.
I know Katie. I know Katie.
You know Katie as well, yeah. There you go, and fellow RADA grad like yourself as well. She teaches a lot. I think she's at Arts Ed now. I'm not sure. Sorry, Katie, if I've
not at Arts at the moment, because I teach at Arts. She's not there at the moment. I don't know where. I know I'm not sure where she. Unless she is. Unless I don't. No, I don't think she is at Arts at the moment. But yeah.
I don't know. So, sorry, Katie, I've got that wrong. But it's she. I remember going to see her to help me like some monologues, ideas, and stuff like that. And I remember, you know, she's got a really beautiful way of like saying of telling you the truth, not in a harsh way, but like if something's not working, she'll tell you, but she gives you the tools to help it work. So sometimes I'll be doing a monologue for her and she goes, no, start again, I don't believe you. No, do it again. Okay. And then she'll go, okay, stop. Okay, right, let's look at this. Let's break this down. So if I'm doing Shakespeare, she'll be like, okay, iambic pentameter, blah, blah, blah. Okay, maybe stress that word. And you go, oh yeah, that's right. You know, yeah. And no, it's fine. And she was brilliant. Like sometimes she'll, like I say, she'll be like, no, start again. No, start again. And then, but feeling, I didn't feel anything negative towards her because I trusted her.
Yeah.
I trust her because she wanted you to do well. She wanted you to be brilliant, not perfect, but brilliant. And it was great at the end. Like you do a monologue for her and then she'll look at you and she'll just do this. And then she'll give you a thumbs up and be like, okay. Yeah. And you're like, okay, right. And it's true. Like I said to her before, it's like, I trusted her more than anything. And that's what you want from a teacher. Essentially, totally. At the end of the day. And speaking of like drama schools and stuff like that, I know in collaboration with our mutual friend Harry Burton as well, you are part of the leading movement to restore the Actors Centre. I know you've done a lot of promotional work. You've been featured on the news recently. I know you've done an article for the BBC about this as well. So how's your journey been with that and where are you right now?
Well, it's been a long and kind of so many different words, kind of painful, brilliant, kind of awful, exasperating. Basically, I taught at the Old Actors Centre for many years, and I started Meisner. That's where I discovered Scott Williams's first Meisner course there, or my first Meisner course with him. And it was kind of, it changed my life because that sounds a little bit kind of, you know, it's sort of dramatic, but it did actually change my life because it completely transformed me as an actor. And then I started my teaching completely without any kind of plan beforehand. I sort of fell into it. And then that's become something that's been, you know, hugely important creatively for me. So the Actors Centre was a place, it was in this building in Tower Street in Covent Garden that had been funded for in large part by Sir Anthony Hopkins, but had started in different buildings and been funded by actors for actors for years. It had started in 1978 and had been a real hub, not just for fantastic high quality ongoing training, which all actors sort of should probably be doing, but as an art form we tend to go, oh, I've trained or I've done a job. And actually the original founders realized that actually ongoing training is really important. And it was a very important collaborative creative community hub where you met lots of people. You could sit in the coffee bar, suddenly it was like, do you want to come and do reading? Should we go and yeah. So there was this feeling of networking, collaborating, a place like a home that you could come, you could have a coffee, you didn't have to be doing a class, you could go for a wee in central London, you could be home from home kind of thing.
Yeah.
It had its ups and downs. It went through different iterations of sort of artistic directors. Sometimes it was more kind of creative than other times, but it ultimately was built for actors by actors, and that was its legacy. During COVID, the woman that had been running it, she'd actually been running the Actors Centre, so she wasn't brought in during COVID, and a colleague essentially completely repurposed the building, and they took out all the training and all the membership, and this was the big kind of shock, and made it into essentially used what was the Tristan Bates Theatre, named in honour of Alan Bates's late son. They made the theatre the kind of central part of the endeavour, so that they were going to produce shows and they were going to have kind of shows coming in, and that was where they were going to sort of focus their energy, and then they were going to have a few workshops kind of affiliated to the shows. What was from the beginning, we were like, A, you've just taken out everything that this building was set up for, and B, you've removed 67% of the income, which is
that's not good.
So we were there, we created a group of us, sort of actors, ex-members of the Arts Centre, tutors, a former artistic director. We all kind of banded together, and who knew? We started this campaign to basically return training to the building, because the building we perceived the building as to be the building for actors. It wasn't meant to be just a kind of producing theatre. And we got told that it had become elitist because it was for actors only. We were like, yeah, but the clue's in the name. It was the Actors Centre, and lots of other creatives were always in the building. You had directors and writers and dancers. It was never exclusively actors, but it was sort of focused more on the acting profession. And there were lots of support from Equity and various different initiatives from the BBC and Channel 4. There were all kinds of exciting things that sort of kept it afloat. It was never going to be a big profit-making organisation, but it kept afloat. Anyway, we were there sort of saying this is going to be a disaster, because this is a very, the overheads of this building. But the building was on a peppercorn rent, like £1 a year for 999 years, right? That's what like Actors Centre had, which is meant why we could afford to be in that building and all the rest of it. Nice. Anyway, we called our campaign Actor at the Centre, and we campaigned in the press. We went to the Charity Commission on numerous occasions. Charity Commission were extremely slow in coming forward. They wouldn't really engage. We then found ways, we were like working out who knew who in what bit. Anyway, found ways to connect a bit more to the Charity Commission. Long story short, the people running now called Seven Dials Playhouse sold the lease, and they sold it for 3.6 million. Wow. On a what's called leaseback arrangement, where they then had to pay, instead of this peppercorn rent of £1 a year, 300 grand a year. So anyone understanding anything about a small arts organisation knows that £300,000 a year on rent, then all the others pay, salaries, overheads, is just nigh on impossible on a 4.5% of the historic, income, which was the theatre. So we were there, we met with the trustees, we got involved with the Charity Commission, and they would not countenance the idea of bringing training back. They just wouldn't have it. So in the end, the Charity Commission started what's called a statutory inquiry. They sent in these interim managers, and about a month ago, the building shut. It's gone into liquidation. There isn't a penny left from that 3.6 million. There is zero. In fact, there's deficit. So that's the negative. That's the tragedy, and a kind of travesty, really, that an arts building of that level of income, of that price, as it were, in central London, has gone, completely gone. Yeah. So out of the ashes, four of us, four remaining people from the Actor at the Centre campaign, so myself, Harry Burton, as you said, Louise Bangay and Aviana Snow, are the new directors of the directors of the new Actor Centre, we've got a very good and positive relationship with the Maravan Theatre, which is near Baker Street.
Yeah.
And it's the Steiner building, and they've got these beautiful studios. The Steiner building's, it's got lovely architecture, it's got really good artistic kind of vibe. And we at the moment are essentially residents there. We're sort of renting rooms off them. So that's our business model at the moment, is to just pay rent on rooms. And then we're on our second pilot season at the moment, and we're hoping to sort of open proper in September. But we'll obviously have to get funding, because what we can't do is just go on with no support.
Yeah.
But it's very exciting. Lots of classes, lots of students, lots of wonderful teachers, trying to get back that sense of, as I said earlier, not just high quality training, but actually the feeling of community. We are so bereft of it with the self-tape culture at the moment.
Yeah.
And nobody is in a room. Even in auditions, you used to be able to go and sit in a room, and have a quick chat with people and get this feeling that you were a part of a wider, body of people. Now it's just you in your bedroom doing your self-tape, sending off into the ether, never to be seen again or heard of again. And we want to have that feeling that people feel that they can have some agency in their creativity and, be in a space with other artists, other actors.
Yeah. It's true, because like the things that I remember getting to GSA and stuff, and I remember I had 2 in-person auditions in 2020, early 2020, before the whole world shut down, and I remember going there and everything. It was great, and then suddenly my Guildford audition was to be in April of 2020, and of course that got cancelled for obvious reasons. So they said send us a tape. And I was like, what? Send a self-tape. And I was like, what's that? And it's just like you say, you're in your room, delivering to a wall, or like a dot on the wall, which is like your scene partner, or you've got the lines there in case you're, on a tight schedule. But that feeling of a community, and from what I've seen and what I've read, is that you guys want to rebuild the community vibe that you had there. Because, we're social animals, we want to have connection, we're just that proof, even though it's true all the time, but we'll have that proof, that physical proof, that we're not alone, that we're all in this together. And I think that's what you guys are doing, not only with the campaigns and the restorations, but to know you've had Harriet Walters actually involved as well. I know she's done a few talks like on stage and everything with Harry and everything. And to have that level of backing from someone as amazing as her, I think is brilliant. But where are you sort of now? I mean, because it looks like it's picking up pace now.
Yeah, we're in our second pilot. So we did a pilot between January and March, and we're now doing one April through June, to the end of June. And we have classes every week. And we have a really good range. So we've got classes around things like self-taping, and we've got one coming up on social media content, things about very much the kind of current climate of the industry. But then we've also got some really good, solid sort of working with Shakespeare, then there's Meisner tech. We've got, film classes. We've got all kinds of a range of things. So stuff that's slightly more directed to, we've got individual sessions on how to kind of sort your spotlight and your branding and all that kind of thing. And then we've got Shakespeare or working on a play, Harry's doing Pinter, so there's a good mix. So if you want to come and I need to brush up on my audition skills, or I need to get really good on these bloody self-tape and how to do it in a really effective way quickly and all the rest of it. Or if I want to come and do a 3-session course culminating in a scratch, these are the kind of things that are on offer. We want the side we really want to develop is how we develop the kind of community feel in the space, because we are sort of in someone else's space, as it were, although we're very much part of that. We want to have this thing, how do we engender a more of a sense that people can just drop in, hang out, like we did in Tower Street. And that's going to take a little bit of kind of working out how to make that a bit more workable. But already the feedback from people attending and the sense of kind of joy and relief and that feeling of being, without sounding, too pious, but being home. So you can walk into a space with like-minded actors and you can have a good workout and you can come away feeling invigorated and that you've learned something and that you can take ownership that you're an actor. I mean, I think the thing that I found so hard when I first left drama school was that sense of when you're at a drama school or you're in a job, you're being used the whole time. You are busy. You are proactively engaged in something. When you are unemployed, even if you've got a day job, you find it's very hard to kind of own that you're an actor. You feel like suddenly, oh, I'm not an actor anymore because no one's employing me. And when I went to the Actor Centre and started working with people and collaborating, I started to sort of reclaim I am an actor. It doesn't matter whether the industry is employing me right now. I'm an actor and I'll always be an actor. And I can call myself an actor because I'm engaged in actory type things. I don't need to be, again, and I say a lot to my students, if you're waiting for the industry to validate you to say you're an actor, then that's a very painful place to be, because the industry is market led, and it will employ you or it won't, and it's not personal. It's doing what it needs to do.
Yeah.
And you have to find, we as artists and actors have to, and every kind of artist has to find a way to live that without being reliant on a paid job. And that doesn't mean I'm saying we shouldn't get paid jobs, but just to really make very clear.
It's essential.
and I'm very, I think artists are often, oh, but you love it because you're an artist, so you can do it for free. I'm not into that at all.
No.
But I just think being someone like the Actor Centre, as you say, you're around other actors. You're in a space. You're like, we're in it together. We're human. We're connecting. And I think the big word for me, which is so linked to all the work I do with the Meisner work, and is connection. We are in a world where we are really struggling to connect. And so we have this kind of obsessive connecting through social media. But what we find difficult to do is find spaces where we can actually connect in a room with our peers, with whatever, and have some sort of meaningful time together.
Yeah, absolutely. I feel like the communal vibe is something that sadly, well, hopefully it is making a comeback, I think. Well, I'd like to put it out there anyway. It sadly has declined a little bit because of social media and stuff now, because, socializing now, I can't tell you how many times at drama school, like our breaks wouldn't be talking about the class we just did or the monologues that we're trying to learn or the scenes we're trying to learn. Oh, don't get me wrong, there was a lot of times like that. But there were also a lot of times where we just be sitting around a table and we're all just on Instagram or YouTube or showing each other everyone's on the phone, just like, oh, have you seen this? Oh, it's really funny. Yeah, back to that. And this is a whole subject matter in of itself. But we're obviously trying to find a way to be more connected in a severely more disconnected world. Ironically enough, and I think just the vibe of I know there's like in the green room sometimes. I like when just before a show. Now I can't tell you like shows I used to do when I was a teenager and stuff, and you're all just there chatting about stuff and about the show and everything, and you hear the audience come in and you're just like, and there's that hushed silence that goes over the room and going, okay, it's happening now, this is happening. And we need more experiences like that. Just reminds us of what it's like to be human, in this world of, I'm not going to go into this, I'm going to mention this in passing, but of AI, we want to make sure that we don't succumb to that, and realize that we are the creators and the individuals that we are, and more than ever, and I think we owe you guys and Harry and the whole team, a lot of thanks for what you're doing. We need to get the communal vibe back, more than ever, right?
Yeah, I think so, and thank you for saying that. And I think we do, and I feel quite passionately about this. I mean, I also think kind of on a sort of, politically, we are in we're in a sort of climate. I mean, I've noticed look, I'm much older now, but I have noticed, even like, as I said to you, when I left RADA, the industry was kind of different to when it had been before, where you almost went from drama school straight into the reps, and that changed. I've noticed now, and I was talking to some friends about this last night, all actors, all of us who met at the Actor Centre, actually, and we're all good mates, but we were sort of talking about the fact that it's got the pool of people coming into the industry is so big now, because it's, whether one thinks it's a good idea or not, there used to be more of a kind of closed shop with equity, and you had to have an equity card in order to get a job or get all of that. And, it opened up, and in many ways that was good because it liberated more people to be able to do it. And there were lots of positives about that. But we've now got a situation where we are in this kind of vast pool of actors. And now things like social media influence, if you've got a big following, that might get you more, likelihood to get a job, that kind of thing. And yet, if you look sort of at the pyramid, the people actually getting the work is getting smaller and smaller and smaller at the top. And there comes a point where we have to, and it's very hard as an actor, particularly as a young actor, to sort of put your head above the parapet and go, I don't like this, or this system is shit, or this doesn't work, because we're all frightened. Oh, speak out of turn. There are lots of other people that would like a job. So if you want to, don't be difficult. Yeah. And I think the benefit of me being older now is that I am prepared to put my head up above the parapet a bit more and say, actually, the system is really problematic around, for example, self-tapes. Not that self-tapes per se are problematic. Sometimes they're very useful for people if you can't travel to a room, if you have access needs, if you, don't want to pay 40 quid return on a train. They're great. So I'm not saying boo to all self-tapes. But what I am saying is what's happened is that you can have, instead of 30 actors in a room, you can have 300 on a tape. So the actor is putting in as much work, setting 2 hours of their day up, getting their equipment, getting someone to read in, getting an app where they do the lines, doing all that kind of work, being told quite specifically how they should or shouldn't do it, to then send it into the void. And more often than not, it's fair enough. If you've got to look at 150 tapes, you're not going to feed back every individual tape. I get that. But at the same time, the actor is then left with no human sense of someone shaking their hand and going, I really enjoyed that. Thank you so much. Or we'll be into, where you think, well, even if I didn't get it, I've made a good connection. I've made a connection with the casting director. I've made a connection with the producer or the director or whoever it is. Now they don't see you, the person, they see the character you're playing. And if you're getting it right for them, great. And if you're not, they don't know who you are. So I feel like we're getting to this place in the industry where we are becoming more and more like numbers in a, dispensable, really. We're not unique personalities. We're just sort of 100 people trying out this one particular part. And I think we have to claim the community back, and we have to claim our own, as much as we can, stand up for ourselves. And I think this is why we started the campaign, because in the face of people saying we have removed something that was really a vital resource and you're just going to get on with it. And we just went, well, no, we're not going to get on with it. We're actually going to say no. And it's been bloody hard because a lot of people don't listen. But it's felt like an imperative, really. And I think starting the New Actor Centre feels like an imperative in terms of everything we've just been talking about,
Yeah, I know.
People actor power, we have very little of it. Take it where we can get it.
Yeah, it's about rediscovering that more than anything,
and knowing what agency you have, and because you can't tell someone, I want this job, you've got to give me this job. You don't have that power, but you do have power to create the spaces and be with the people. I mean, obviously, again, money permitting, and I do understand this is, this maybe I'm sounding a little idealistic, and not everyone can afford to do classes or can afford to take time out to be in community, and I really do understand that. But what I would say is, if you do have, even if it's just to come and hang out, there's something about getting that sense of community back.
Yeah, and that's what we want. We want the community, and so where we are now, we're in April now as we speak. So say a year from now, so April 2027, where would you like the movement to be?
Well, the plan is to sort of officially open in September. Again, we've got to have various kind of sign on the dotted lines and have those conversations. It's not a complete done deal yet, but that's the hope, that's the aim. And I suppose it's to have, this time next year, an even wider timetable, a more space, more conducive to community and collaborative artistic projects arising from the space. And ideally, which we've talked about to the Maravan, it'd be fantastic to use one of their rooms if we could convert it into a little studio space, because the theatre is amazing, but it's a commercial theatre that's, nearly 300 seats. We can't take projects necessarily like they used to do at the Tristan Bates in Tower Street, but create a space within the building that could be used for artists who are coming into the building, doing the classes, running the classes, whatever, and then there is an opportunity to try out work or all of that kind of stuff. And I suppose the big one is to be funded, because at the moment we haven't got any funding.
Yeah. Yeah.
And this is where this is where we have to really breathe hard, because when you think about the money that was squandered and the loss of the major asset, which was the building in Tower Street, it's galling, and you have to try and overcome that and go right from scratch. Here we go. And it was lovely because when we had our opening, we had Sheila Hancock, who had been an original founder in 1978, and they started with nothing, and it was kind of full circle round, and it was there were so many people turned up for this opening back in January that we had to have kind of 2 shifts with Sheila because there were too many people, couldn't fit them in the room. And it was very encouraging. But I suppose what I would also say to people listening is that this is all of ours. I mean, we're kind of getting that we've got the ball rolling, and we're the sort of directors, as it were. But that doesn't mean that people can't contribute, offer, turn up, make it what they want it to be. We want it to feel like, it, rather than actors being told what to do, it's like actors sort of coming in and creating the thing with us, having that sense of, oh, this would be amazing to have this. Bring your ideas, come to the classes, sign up, get in touch, make offers, tell us what you want from it, tell us what you want to offer us, all of these things, so that it feels like you have a stake in it.
Yeah, and I thought, and it shows like the value of actors as well. It's and the arts in general, because again, we talked about, I don't know if you saw this, I didn't, but I heard about this quote that went around during the pandemic, which was, when the world shut down, what did it turn to? It turned to art. It turned to Netflix. It turned to YouTube. It turned to Amazon Prime Video. It turned to theatre streaming services started, and that time National Theatre at Home started. During that time, it turned to art, it turned to music, it turned to podcasts like this one, and it's always funny, people in charge, I'm not going to name names here, but the people in charge of the country, they like their music, they like their art, they like this, but they don't want to fund it. And they go, oh yeah, I love that thing we saw. I love that music. We haven't heard anything from a while. Yeah, because you cut the funding. So, or you didn't, yeah. So anyway,
it's a very serious issue, and you're completely right. And I think I think there's quite an interesting attitude, perhaps, in sort of whether it's politicians or people. I don't know, and I can't speak for the public, but there can be a slightly peculiar attitude that sort of actors and artistic people are slightly kind of, I don't know what the word is, not to be taken altogether seriously, or that they're, whenever an actor has an opinion about anything, oh, you're just an actor, get back to being an actor, stop having an opinion about anything. Or the fact that we are, what was it, Kemi Badenoch said the other day about, we're going to get rid of soft degrees or something, or dud. I can't remember the word was. It was something really pejorative. And the first one was performing arts. And the madness of that is that on a kind of financial level, the arts bring in billions of pounds. It is a hugely money bringing, as you say, everyone in COVID was watching some kind of form of entertainment, keeping us all sane, and art and storytelling and all the stuff we watch, whether it's, on films or streaming or in the theatre or whatever, is part of being human. It's not a fun little extra. When the going gets tough, we get rid of that, because we'd all go insane if we had nothing to lift the spirit, to take us into different worlds, to help us use our imagination, all of these things. And we are in difficult times because there is a kind of attitude of when economically things are problematic, we have to get rid of the lightweight stuff.
Mm.
And one of the things, I think I felt, I mean, again, it could be my story, so I'm not going to say it's a truth. I'm just going to say it's my experience. When we were sort of first talking to the Charity Commission, there was a slight sense of we were a sort of merry band of actors, sort of, wanging on about our concerns. And it took quite a long time for people to go, oh, actually, maybe they do. Actually, we should take these people seriously, or they're not just sort of flouncing in, being sort of lovies, that awful expression. We are actually serious people with serious concerns about a deeply problematic situation that needs attending to urgently. And of course, what happened was they didn't attend to it urgently, and we are where we are today. And I think, again, it's that feeling of, I think, actors and creatives, but I would say particularly actors, because we speak other people's words, and there are so many of us, and we are often infantilized and treated like we're treated different. When I was first out of drama school, as I said, I was both going to my acting auditions and I was also going into writing meetings. I'd walk into a writing meeting and people would be, hi, Kate, how are you? And I'm really interested in this. And me and Soph would sit there, my friend that we were co-writing together, and they would talk to us like we had a brain. And then I'd go into an acting audition a bit later and they'd, hi, Kate.
Oh, God.
How are you? And I'd think, this is so interesting. It was a real lesson. I was like, same person, same face, same voice, same level of, something to offer creatively. And I think it's quite a struggle. And I think you have to kind of really, again, I'm not advocating that people go and be difficult and, create tension with their agent or tension with the people they're working with. I'm not advocating that at all. But I think we do have to sort of understand our agency and power a little bit. Otherwise, it's very easy. I spent way too long trying to work out what I thought other people wanted me to be. How do they want me to be for this job? How do I need to behave? How do I need to come across? And again, the benefit of aging is that you get less bogged down in that.
Yeah.
But all you've got, and I say, all you've got really is your unique wonderfulness, which is you.
Yeah.
Fully bring it. Trying to conform and contort yourself.
No.
To fit into the idea of what you think someone else wants never got me anywhere.
Yeah, I know. And it's a trap you fall into when you're younger. You feel like you have to. I think it starts with school, doesn't it? If you can't go against the teachers, if you go against teachers, you get shouted out or you get thrown out of the room, and then you have to go home that day and say to your mum, "Oh yeah, the teacher shouted at me today. Were you being naughty?" It's ingrained from such an early age, and it's not until you get a bit older then you see things and you learn how to voice your opinion and stand up for yourself that you go, so A, this power was in me from the beginning, and B, if you've got something to say, bloody well say it, and yeah.
But it's, but I hear also it's hard because if you do say it, some people go, yeah, thank you very much. There are 5 other people behind you who've got this part, so be quiet. You know what I mean? So we're in that slightly caught between two, a rock and a hard place. If you speak up too much, you risk people going, they're difficult. If you don't speak up, you end up, sometimes not honoring yourself. And it's funny, I suppose the big question for all of us is, how do you speak up without burning bridges? How do you hold your truth without going, I've now blown it? And I don't know is the answer to that. That's a really hard one because, but I have noticed the more I speak without defense, without aggression, without, leaving it too late and then getting really exorcised about something, just the more you can speak your truth calmly and, the better.
Indeed. And it sounds like, it is a challenge, but, it sounds like what you're doing is it's, you're creating the communal vibe again, which is brilliant.
And we want people to be able to come and speak and say what they would like and not feel like that, they're in some sort of situation where they have to be quiet in the corner and behave and go away again being told they're shit.
No, we don't want that.
That's not the vibe we're trying to create.
But I don't, I do have another story. I don't mean to be like all doom and gloom today, but I remember there was a time I went to a drama school. I won't say which one it was, But you walked in the, and we're all sat in the foyer, kind of like really nervous, not really knowing what was going to happen. And it's just the way these two guys just walked past us, and they sort of looked at us, and they said that thing. We go, it's like you don't need to look so scared. This is a happy place.
Mm.
And I remember thinking at the time, okay, even if I do the best audition of my life in this room in this place today, I'm still going to turn it down. So, and anyway, long story short, I didn't get in anyway. But you know when you do those auditions and you're talking with the panel, and then you just immediately and instinctively know there is no chance in hell I am working with either of you two. The vibe here is just not wrong. It is not right. Sorry. Yeah. And but anyway, yeah, and your gut instinct's always right, in every situation, but anyway, but all I can say is before we move on to Miser, I'd say just keep doing what you're doing, Kate, and best of luck with the campaign. And
Thank you.
yeah, and are there any links that you could send me?
Yeah, so
Actually,
I can send you, we've got all the website, which is actorscentre.org, New Actors
New
Centre.
Actor Centre.
We've got our Instagram page, the New Actors Centre, Facebook. I mean, we're on the dreaded X, but I don't really want to interact with that too much.
Yeah, no,
But
less said about that, the better.
yeah, so I mean, it's all there, and can't really encourage people enough to just have a look, take a look, see if something, and spread. And also, I think one of the things, just finally before we move on, is about, we just need to spread the word. We're a voluntary unit at the moment, and so there's so much woman power we have available to us. So it all kind of people getting engaged and spreading the word and following and all that is just really helpful.
Yeah, brilliant. Keep it up, and I'm sure your hard work and Harry's and everyone else involved will be rewarded. And
Hope so.
yeah,
Hope so.
of course. Yeah, and of course, yeah. Links. If you send them over, Kate, I'll put them down below, and then people can do what they do with them.
Fantastic.
Anyway, on to your work. So, Meisner.
Meisner.
How did you fall in love with Meisner?
Well, it's a good point. So at RADA, we didn't do any Meisner at that point. So I did a lot of Uta Hagen and Stanislavski and some Laban and some various bits and bobs.
Yeah.
And all great stuff. But what I noticed was I'm quite a thinky person. I think I've got quite an overactive mind, and also someone that wanted to do well and be good. So I over-intellectualized a lot of my technique. So I noticed that I would be sort of thinking about my objectives or thinking about my circumstances or thinking about, and it got me into a bit of a kind of pickle. And I remember particularly my second year just sort of being overwhelmed with sort of technical, trying to get it right and all the rest of it. Anyway, left, still had some great training and still, some really good stuff. Went about 3 years after graduating, went to the Actor Centre, saw this course run by this guy called Scott Williams called Meisner Technique, and in the blurb it just went that sounds good. Literally, that was the only course it pinged out. I went, I'll do that one.
Yeah.
And it was a little bit of a light, sort of, as I said earlier, a bit of a kind of light bulb moment, because what it did essentially was root me into being alive and connected in the present moment with my scene partner, and all the head stuff, the technical stuff, the thinky stuff didn't have the space to be in the mix, because if you're putting your attention onto someone else and allowing yourself to respond spontaneously moment to moment, you can't really be in two places at once. So of course your mind pops in now and again, of course it does, that's what mind does, but it wasn't dominant. And then I started to notice that the fun, I mean, God forbid we have fun as actors, but the fun of play, the fun of allowing spontaneous impulse, the relief of being able to put my attention on someone else and not have to come up with stuff, or not have to feel like I've got to be interesting or good, or all the words that we tell ourselves, because what happens to me is coming from how I am perceiving and observing and responding to somebody else. And so that pressure of I've got to get up in front of a group of people and bring it. It was like, no, I'm going to get up in front of a group of people, but I've got this wonderful other person with me, whoever they may be, who I'm just going to get really curious about, put my attention on, and allow myself to respond to them moment to moment. And then I did a lot of kind of, the repetition work, and then I started applying it to kind of scene work, and then I just dived. Scott became, was a wonderful teacher, and I became completely enmeshed, two words into one, in doing regular drop-in classes, regular scene classes. We do this thing called Play a Month, where you take a play, we'd do 4 Saturdays, we'd invite people on the last, we'd call it not performance. It was all about what came out at the moment, intentionally not directed. And it just felt so free, so liberating, and so, as I said, fun. I mean, I think we can take ourselves very seriously as actors, especially in drama school situations where you just feel like you've got to be good, and it can get very earnest or very kind of serious. And I'm a big fan of commitment and hard work, but I think play and enjoyment is really important. Whatever the material you're working with, you need to be enjoying the process. And yeah, and then after a year, 2, 3 years, I can't even remember now. My teacher said to me, "I'm away. Do you want to take a class for me?" And I was like, "What? Do I? I don't know." And then the teaching started, and it started very small. I cut my teeth. I've very few students to start with, just sort of subbing Scott, and then that just gradually built. And then I suppose what's happened with me is I didn't teach, obviously I didn't study under Meisner. Scott had already, who did study under Meisner, but he's already made a few little adaptations. And I then started to pursue what I felt was most helpful to me as an actor, and also the students I was teaching. So I now work with a movement practice that is intrinsic to my Meisner teaching. So every class we move to music, we move into repetition, we move into scene work, we explore a lot of connected body work, we do exercises that kind of have links and principles which are very similar to repetition. So there is a sense that the body is incredibly integrated, because I realized that to be fully available, to be in your impulse, to be as impulsive as you can be, it's very hard to walk in from your day. You just got off a bus, you come in, you have to sit down in front of someone and suddenly be emotionally available. It just, in my experience, it's tense, people get stressed, then they push it. And, so if you actually move, especially if you don't know people in a class, it's a brilliant way to sort of start saying hello to someone is if you're moving with them. And because you've got your attention on them, there's no pressure to come up with interesting movement, or there's no choreography. There's nothing sort of onerous about it. It's simply expressive. And then when you go into the repetition, you're already in a state of kind of flow, physical, energetic flow. So that's my sort of particular exploration. I do some of the more traditional, I mean, a repetition, absolutely. I do that in all my drop-in classes, is repetition.
Yeah.
But I'm very, I suppose if you would say what's my kind of particular interest or focus, is presence. I mean, presence is probably the key word, present performance, how to be fully present when you're doing a scene, how to create a lived conversation rather than a polished, rehearsed scene. So something is actually actively happening in the moment, as opposed to just replicating something that feels like we got to the right place. That's not to say you change the direction every time you do it. It's just you re-find it in the moment. Yeah, connection. I was going to say something and it's completely gone from my head. But anyway, so yeah, so I know what I was going to say. I was going to say that I'm very interested in actors being able to kind of over time extend their range of expression. So a bit like going to a gym, you're building muscles, you're stretching, you're developing all the kind of different parts of your body, all the rest of it, in order perhaps to be a runner or a high jumper. You're still working different parts, you're expanding your range. And I think as actors, it's about finding in the repetition and sort of drop-ins as full a range of your own expression as possible, in order to then bring that to when you're playing characters. So if the actor is open and available, you can play a very defensive character, but you, the actor, are open. If your instrument, as it were, is free, you can then approach character from a more available place, rather than being a tense actor trying to play an open person. If you see what I mean.
It's almost like you're openly, in an ironic way, you're openly showing how defensive you are. You see the defensiveness, which is ironically is expressed outwards, but there's still kind of an energy which there's a barrier there, which is I just love the dynamic of that, and for anyone who, just very quickly, anyone who's not familiar with Meisner, Sanford Meisner was a sort of a protege, or is protege, is that the right word? I don't know. It was sort of a product of Stanislavski, and his theory is shared between three different theories, but they share a common ground between himself, Lee Strasberg, and Stella Adler. And I think Uta Hagen sort of came a little bit later. But those three, Stella Adler, Lee Strasberg, Sanford Meisner. And his one was, I've talked about it on here as well, just a little refresher, that his philosophy was the repetition and everything. And also he has a thing called as if. It's like as if something is going to happen. So I think he has a brilliant quote, which he says, behaving naturally under imaginary circumstances. Or something.
Yeah, living truthfully under imaginary circumstances. Yeah,
living truthfully. And his thing, as if, you don't, it's not so much emotional recall because it's not asking you to go into your life, but as if something has happened, or as if you've received this piece of news, as if you are in this moment. So it helps your imagination to go into all kinds of different places. And it kind of reminds me now actually of like Michael Chekhov. He talks about the artistic center. I remember a teacher of ours told us it's like a bag, or like a bottomless bag, which you can dip into and you can put yourself in any kind of imaginary situation to help you get to where you need to go. But anyway, Michael Chekhov, I think there are some quite nice similarities there, I think, between the two, between that one I just talked about. But Meisner, I think one thing it helped for me more than anything was to be two big things: being present and listening to the scene partner. And I realized that I'd always had that phrase, "Oh, acting is reacting," and I never really truly knew what that meant until I did Meisner, which was, oh, I see. So, and also in life, I'm not thinking about how I look right now. I'm not thinking about, it's like, do a listening face. What does that mean? It does. We're not thinking about the way our face contort and everything. It's just what we were born with. It's our natural gifts, etc. But it showed you like how the audience are allowed to read in to what you're saying. You're not spoon feeding them, because that's just horrendous. You're allowing the audience to go on the journey with you as you go on that journey by listening to your surroundings. And I've spoken to some great people on here about it. Andrew Davidson, who taught me at GSA, and Robin Patterson, who's the head of the London Meisner School as well. And she'd said something really cool, which was your body is full of receptors. And I think it's part of our evolution as well. It ties into your nervous system. You're constantly looking for things. You're scanning every environment which you're in, which you're using your sight, using your ears, your sense of smell, taste, and also it's like this scanning this environment of what's happening, and you're constantly looking for I think when we do this unconsciously, looking for danger around every single corner, but that's just the way our evolution. That's part of our natural journey, etc. But listening to your scene partner helped me realize, oh, not only is acting much easier than I thought it was going to be, but it helps you get to places which you never thought you could. And again, being present and listening, I imagine that's something you say to your students all the time.
All the time, literally all the time. And I think you make a very good point about, often as actors, and it's not even necessarily that we're consciously doing it, but we like to try and show that we understand what the character's feeling, or we want to show what the circumstances are. We demonstrate. And again, I don't mean hammy acting. I just mean we feel the need to sort of spoon feed, as you say, the audience, like just in case you hadn't got it, I feel. And I don't think it's a conscious thing. I think it's just something we do. And then when you start with the repetition and then going into text, as you say, when you allow yourself to just listen, you made a very good point. You say you give the audience space to kind of, I remember working with Improbable Theatre where they would say, dream into the world. You're allowing the audience the intelligence and the emotion to actually see what's there without going, this is what is here, audience. This is what is happening. And the more present, I say this all the time, the more present the actors are, the more present the relationship between audience and actor will be. Because if the actors aren't present with each other, if the actors are acting or replicating or regurgitating something that worked yesterday, the audience may be interested, they may be curious, but they won't necessarily be present. And for me, to have an experience, to have a lived experience, and I, as an audience member, want to be in that lived experience with those performers. I want to come and have an immersive experience. I don't want to just come and sort of intellectually kind of give something an appraisal. I want to be in it. I mean, I'm talking again, ideal terms, you know. It requires the actors themselves to be present. And listening, I write it, I say to my students, don't think because you've done a module in Meisner. Meisner for me is a tool that isn't a module. It's a kind of the basic, let's take the word Meisner out and just say listening and responding is the basis of acting. And I say, I write the word listen on scripts now because it is really easy to get caught in your own performance, caught in what you think you need to be doing, caught in an interpretation. You read the words on the page and you go, oh, I get it. This person feels this, thinks this. You may be kind of in the right ballpark. It's not that your immediate intellectual instinct is wrong, but you end up playing that thought rather than actually being in the moment. So when you listen, as you said, what happens is things come out of you that are spontaneous. And I'm not talking always about sort of big emotion. I'm talking about it could be a little nuance, a little raise of an eyebrow, or a sound you make, or a kind of the way you lean forward, or the way you react with a giggle, or whatever it might be, that feels completely organic. And you cannot pre-plan those things. You can't sit in your bedroom and go, I'll do a little on that line. You just can't do that. So what you're getting is a feeling that two people are actually in the conversation right now in this moment. And the more you allow yourself to listen and put your attention outside of yourself and allow yourself to respond to it, the more you discover about who the people are. So one of the things that I used to do at RADA would, I'd get my script and we'd be writing every single line, was actioning it, or I was doing my objectives. So tedious. And by the time I got to the performance, I was trying to act my homework. And what I realize is now is it's not that work, again, I'm not a fan of going, never do any of that work, but what you then have to do is kind of park that, trust that if that's been of value, it'll be in the mix. And then you listen in the moment, because then you go, oh my God, when you said that to me, I suddenly felt really vulnerable, angry, silly, joyous. And you go, I've just discovered something more about our relationship, which is this. So you're in a sense discovering who these people are in action, as opposed to hours and hours of trying to analyze it over the like, again, this is horses for courses. I'm not saying this is right, just really want to flag that up. But as when I'm directing, I very rarely do table work. I get actors up very, very quickly.
Yeah, that's good.
See what early things we discover, and kind of then move into more and more detail as we go along. Because I think there's a lot to be discovered in just playing with something with no predetermined ideas about what it should be, no sense of, So I think Meisner is just a beautiful way, or listening and responding is a beautiful way of creating more nuanced and detailed performances. And also, I think there's something that's come up for me more recently is, and again, it can sound a bit holier than thou, but our job is to tell a story. That's our job. Our job is not to be brilliant. I say to my actors, I don't want you to, your job is not to be brilliant or really good or fantastic actors. Your job is to tell this story. This is the story we're telling. And the more present and connected you are moment to moment, the more the story comes through. The more you go into I'm a real fan of specificity and moment to moment nuance. I find it very difficult when I see I don't find it very difficult. That's a bit ridiculous. I don't enjoy watching an actor play an emotional state or playing an idea. So this character's angry, so every line is delivered in a sort of angry, shouty way, or this character is a bit sort of seductive, so I'm going to do sort of seductive acting every single line. Play the moment. See what anger looks like in this moment. See what seduction looks like in this moment. In this moment, the seduction might be more sort of stereotypically seductive. In this, it might be something different, because you're responding to what's in front of you. You're not just going, oh, but my character's, funny, so everything's got to be, a bit wacky, or and that again is revolutionary, because what that does for me is it goes, characters three-dimensional. They don't always behave in the same way in every situation. They might behave very differently depending on who's come in the room. I mean, if you think about us as humans, if you go for a job interview in an office, it might be different to how you rock up to an audition. It might be different to how you get on the bus. It might be different how you sit in a doctor's appointment. We're not all the same thing all the time.
No.
So it was a really good way of finding the specificity of this moment. Because if also when you've got good writing, and ideally you're working with good writing.
No, 100%.
So much of the work is in the writers also, if it's good, has provided you with so much information. Sometimes you just need to get up, listen, say the line, and discover without anything else, because the writing will hold you. And I think I'm also, in terms of words, I think I was listening to your another podcast which was great with Robin, and we were talking about the canoe and the river. Remember, you're talking about, so the words of the canoe and the behavior and under is the river, and then the words sit on the top. And I really like that analogy. But I also feel that more and more as I direct, particularly, words have a kind of potency and a resonance. So if I say to you, pass the butter, we might have all kinds of subtextual shit going on, but the words pass the butter are pass the butter, right? If I say, I hate you with every bone in my body, right? Or I love you more than anything in the whole world. That's quite different to pass the butter. So we are working with non-verbal behavior. So if you're saying pass the butter, there might be all kinds of sort of bizarre subtextual stuff, right? Or it could just be a simple pass the butter, please. I want the butter.
Yeah.
But when you say I hate you with every fiber of my being, or whatever it is, those words are different. So the words themselves have resonance, and they also affect how you feel. So how it's said and what is said. Because I notice with students, often when you've got familiar with text, you stop listening to it. So people start responding energetically to each other, which is great. They start responding to the non-verbal, which is fab, but they miss the specificity of what's actually being said. And that's something that is worth remembering as an actor, really listen to what's being said.
Yeah, and also, I remember, I think I've mentioned this very recently as well. We had a teacher at Guildford called Barbara who said to us, telling us about the importance of words and or the interpretation of words. And they said, I remember going, have any of you, I'm sure we've all had this experience, but when you send a text and then you send it and then you realize, oh, that didn't read how I thought it was meant to read. Like it came across maybe it's completely the opposite of what you were trying to say. But by that time it's gone and they've read it and it's in that person's memory now and everything. And then you write back going, oh my God, I didn't mean it like that. I didn't mean it like that. Sorry. But, but it shows you like the way that words can be interpreted and spoke, just going off what you said there. If I was to say to somebody, say if the line is, I'm absolutely furious with you. And if you're in a jokey environment, you go, I'm absolutely furious with you. Like, I am so furious with you right now. It's funny, and, it's still the same line. Or if you're saying to someone who's really, really annoyed you or done something really, really bad, you go, I am absolutely furious with you. It's the same line.
Absolutely right. And that's where the circumstances come in. And so when, if it's two people, and I think what point you've made there, which is great, is you might read that bit like your teacher was saying about the text and go, the word is absolutely furious. Therefore, that's probably really angry. And what I would say is the words say it, and then you listen. And in the moment, if the scene is a comedy, it might be that it's jokey. It might be jokey, even if it's not comedy, but the words themselves, what you just need to know is that you're saying absolutely furious. How you say it, you don't want to determine exactly how you're going to say it. You want to take it off the other and see what's happening. And obviously, if the scene is heightened with anger or tension, it might come out one way. It could be, as you just demonstrated, cold and completely still. It could be it depends again on what you're getting in the moment. And I think what you want to avoid as an actor is making a decision, as I said before, absolutely furious sounds very cross, so I'm going to play it in a very cross way because that's what how my mind has interpreted it. Get in the space and start discovering how best the story gets told in that moment. As a director, I don't have a thing where I go, yeah, just let's change it up every single time we do it, because we get to a point where we go, that what happened just there actually is really great in telling this story in this way. So let's sort of keep that kind of feel. But nonetheless, when you're doing it in the moment, in a live performance, for example, you keep that feel. It might be slightly nuancedly different from last time, but we're not changing it up. But when I first started doing mine, people sort of changed it up so much that sometimes the story got lost. So it is about understanding how to tell the story, but within that, keeping that feeling of connection, listening, open to what's actually happening. And I think what was really fascinating for me is because I found objectives and activities towards actions and all these kind of things very overcomplicating at RADA. And then when I started doing mine, I was like, oh, okay, hold on a second. I think I'm understanding more about objectives now, which is that you identify what the character wants, and if we're doing more of a scenic objective rather than a kind of overriding objective, and then you realize that with the text you've got and the relationship, you are naturally playing tactics to get what you want, because the text will either take you somewhere new, or the way your fellow actor is responding will mean you have to be alert to that, and therefore you might have to change tack. And I realized that that's happening in the moment, and that's where you can start understanding how objectives but if you start pre-planning it all, what then goes wrong potentially is that your fellow actor doesn't give you exactly what you want to make sense of the way you've planned it in your bedroom, and then you get two actors sort of acting opposite each other but not actually connecting.
And then you don't surprise yourself anymore as well.
You don't surprise yourself. It just becomes a replication of, as I said earlier, you don't want acting to look like a really good polished performance of a rehearsal. You want it to look like it's happening in front of people right now in this moment.
Yeah, because that's what
it is. To be honest, it is. And that there's always that thing which was always very annoying when people used to say, yeah, you've got to imagine you've never said these lines before. And of course the mind goes, yeah, but I've said them 800 times before because I've done a show for 6 months, But what you can do, and I think this is a really helpful distinction, is say, but I've never said them now.
I like that.
I said them yesterday, the day before, but I've never said them now. And I've never said them now before.
Yeah.
So that's how you keep in. But what's happening right now? Even as I said, if it's a sort of very nuanced little shift in behaviour, it's still alive in this moment, and that's never happened before.
Yeah, and I absolutely, it's live theatre at the end of the day. And one thing that I just thought about there was that I love subtext. I love the subtext never seen. Like you said earlier, pass the butter or something. I know Harry, who I've just mentioned as well. He's a fan of Pinter. I don't know if you've noticed that, but he he's been on here 3 times talking about it as well. But we're going to do the birthday party next, hopefully soon. So stay tuned for that one. Pinter had a brilliant quote, which was, again, I'm not paraphrasing here, but he says, "Beneath the word spoken is the actual thing unspoken." And that's why Pinter's work is so revered, because you're meant to read into it and understand what's going on, and play the Henry Wolfe, one of Pinter's closest friends and collaborators. Sadly, he's no longer with us, but he said play it down the middle of the pitch, which is essentially saying just say the fucking lines, and then allow whatever. And if you're responding and everything, you allow the subtext to happen in the environment to surprise you, and then therefore you're in the moment, And I'm reminded of, just like there's imagine like, the subtext of a scene, you're not addressing it at all, but it's just screaming out without any words or sounds. And so say if you're at a table and like there's 3 or 4 people around, and you're in the aftermath of an argument. And so there's that atmosphere, and then someone goes, "Can you pass the butter, please?" And you're like, "Sorry, can you pass the butter, please?" It's like, yeah. And then it's that, "Thank you." That's what you're saying. But
yeah, exactly. But it's the connection. Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's the thing. And sometimes a thing is just a thing, Can you pass the butter? Because I want the butter. Yes, there's the butter. Yeah. Not particularly dramatically interesting, to be fair.
Yeah.
And sometimes we say things on the nose, And sometimes we say things in an attempt to actually say something else. And that's the thing to discover, is like, when are we being, sort of, everything's more subtextual and we're saying one thing on the top layer, and then actually there's a whole level of other stuff going underneath. Sometimes we're just saying, I mean, to the degree that there's always unconscious material, but sometimes we're just saying the thing. Sometimes we're not saying the thing. Sometimes we say one thing, but we mean the opposite. And all of these things are kind of to be discovered. And I think for me, the word discovery is really, really important. What I like about, so one of the first exercises you do when you're working with text with Meisner is to do some unseen work. So you're given a scene, you haven't read it, you don't know what it is, there's no expectation, you don't even know what it is. So you can't try and be good in it, you don't know what it is. And one of the things I often say is, what did you discover? What did you discover? Oh, I discovered that I hate you. Or, oh, I discovered that actually I think we might be siblings. And then it's interesting. No, they're actually lovers. And then you go, oh, that's interesting, that it's got a kind of sibling-y feel to it. It's like, it's how do you discover things without already making those decisions? And every time you perform, I do this, the show you alluded to at the beginning, The Old House, when I perform it, and funny enough, I've performed it elsewhere other than, I think, whatever bio you got there of mine, it was good. I would sort of be behind stage, because of course it's very nerve-wracking, isn't it? And especially if you're going on your own and you're about to go on stage. And I would say to myself, enjoy yourself and make some discoveries. Even though I wrote the bloody thing, do you know what I mean? But it's like,
Yeah.
But it's like, and that's exciting, because even when I was rehearsing that and I wrote it, I'd be rehearsing it and go, oh, I just understood that bit.
Yeah.
Do you see what I mean? So I think take mine aside, but when you're working, so I remember working with, Chekhov and doing the Seagull, and we used to take stage directions out because we didn't want to get bogged down in, she weeps, he screams hysterically, whatever it was. I mean, Chekhov, that wouldn't be a stage direction. But what would happen was you would, and then emotion would come up, or energy would come up, and then you look down, and that's what the stage direction would be. But you hadn't planned it. It came out in the moment. And I just think that there's so much more available to us in performance, in terms of connection and how we respond as human beings, than often our mind will go to the most obvious. One of the exercises I do, I can't say that word, with my students, I do this devising for camera course at Arts Ed, and I ask people to go out and record conversations. I mean, discreetly, clearly, but in out in the world. And it's amazing how actually we talk often in a more kind of extraordinary way, or we are expressive in a kind of interesting way. You can find all kinds of weird and wonderful things in the world that we might write down and go, no, that's too weird. But actually, it's reality.
Yeah.
So it's like being open to discover without putting a lid on what you think the behavior should or shouldn't be.
Yeah. You've just reminded me of an exercise we did again in Guildford. They said we wanted to like demystify this feeling of how a person moves. Like, when you're on stage, therefore I must move differently because I'm on stage. That's no. You move as when you naturally move, right? So I remember our instructor, our teacher said, okay, so for today, for the first hour, I want you to leave the building, and I want you, it sounds a bit weird actually thinking about it now, but we want you to go to a certain part of campus, and you're going to follow or observe from a distance just any person. You don't.
Well, I get to do.
Yeah. Don't go up and talk to them. Don't let them know that you're. Don't give the impression you're following them or watching their every move. But do it discreetly, of course. But and after an hour, just watch what they do. I mean, I know it sounds a bit stalkery, but watch what they do and what they're doing there. Any act can be a performative act. Going up to a bookshelf at a library and just flicking through a copy of Julius Caesar, or crossing the road, or walking to your halls where you're staying, and walking to the pub, or just sitting down on a park bench with your headphones on, just having a moment and just taking it all in, or sitting by the lake, there's a lake on campus in Surrey as well, anything is a performative act. And well, are they performing this thing? Are they performing reading a book going, wow, no, they're not. Because that's just I don't know who snuck that into the mix that everything is a performance thing. It's like, because it isn't, it's life, and actually, as stalkery as I did feel doing it, it actually was really helpful because it just demystified all this thing of, what we see them do is that we see these people do on stage. We see the people, what they do on camera. So actually, it's much easier than you think. And you can say so much without doing a thing,
Absolutely. And I think, again, one of the big Meisner exercises is just listening to the sounds, listening to the sounds.
Indeed.
And
Indeed.
when we listen to sounds, we don't show that we're listening to sounds. We just listen, So if I'm doing improvisations, I'll say, sit on the tube, just sit on the tube. Don't show me you're sitting on the tube. Don't do I'm on the tube acting. Because when you're on the tube, you're not going, hello, everyone, I'm on the tube. You're just, you're looking at your phone, you've got your headphones on, you're staring into space, whatever. You're just in your own world, probably thinking your thoughts. But going back to, I think it's that interesting thing. So you got that thing, you do not want to perform an idea of a character, but you also want to allow the character to do things that you weren't necessarily expecting. So a great line that was said to me at RADA was, it's not what you would do, it's what you could do. And that sense of, oh no, but I wouldn't do that. I wouldn't do that. It's like, well, how do you know you wouldn't do it? Try it, Oh, my character wouldn't do that. There's a sense of, I get in some ways, I understand when people say that. I understand the validity of that statement sometimes.
Yeah.
But actually, certainly in rehearsal, if you're doing theatre, you can experiment. And I mean through the connection of the moment. I don't just mean trying to be kind of wacky for the sake of it. But actually, human beings, we are kind of peculiarly expressive and then very still. We have all kinds of different things. And so sometimes... And who was it? I think, was it on your other podcast? I can't remember. Oh, I know yes, it was a really interesting bit. I was very nodding along with great sort of fervor. One of the things we've got into culturally, because we're very kind of visual, televisual and filmic is a very predominant kind of medium at the moment, that people think I must do nothing. So I must do nothing and I must show nothing. And that's good screen acting. I must do almost nothing. And the problem with that is you're doing nothing.
Yeah.
I mean, if you've got the most phenomenally rich internal life that comes through your eyes, you can afford to be facially extremely minimal, but you've got to be so doing something internally. And I think what happens is on screen, we're so frightened now of sort of any expression as being somehow performative. That people end up, so there's a lot of acting where everyone's sort of doing this the whole time, so everyone's whispering and mumbling because it feels like it's a form of authenticity, and to be honest, it's enough for me. Love to all of those mumblers out there, but it does feel like an affectation. It feels like this is truthful because I'm so not pushing it. I'm actually whispering. But most people like you and I, we're not having this conversation where we're sort of talking like that's not
It doesn't
truthful.
make any sense.
It makes absolutely no sense whatsoever. Can you imagine?
Not how we talk in life. This is how we talk in life.
Yeah, we're on our voice, unless suddenly someone comes in the room who we don't want to hear.
Yeah.
And we go down like that because that, so I think I think with expression, again, it's not about being on, camera and gurning and pieces and sort of over gesticulating, which would be too much for a camera. But it's also about knowing that don't fear your expression. Someone can always say, pull it back.
Yeah.
And there's a very good quote, and I used to think it was David Mamet, who's come somewhat of a controversial figure recently, but I don't think it is now, apparently. I don't know. Anyway, this is a great quote. Invent nothing, deny nothing. So how I understand that is don't demonstrate, don't invent, I'm listening, or I'm, going to the books in the library, or equally, don't deny yourself an impulse if it comes up. So you don't need to fake anything, you don't need to push anything, but you also give permission in the moment through connection with your scene partner or various actors in the space You give permission to what wants to speak in that moment. And then you see, because nothing ventured, nothing gained in the moment. And then if you and the director and the fellow actors think, no, that was very peculiar, or that didn't work, or that doesn't tell the story, don't do it. But there's something about allowing things. And when I'm directing, I like to work from what the actors kind of find in the moment. It kind of informs me. It's like a circular, it's not me coming and going, right, it needs to look like this, it needs to be like that. I do a little bit of more prescriptive directing, but what I like is going, oh, you've just done some lovely, strange move over to that side of the room. I like that. What's that about? And that's information for me because it's come out of the moment.
Yeah, and I feel like there's you're all in the moment and just allow the moment to take you and stuff, and I think also a part of that is just getting rid of these expectations that you have to deliver something, that you have to look like that. Some people can have, people can, don't worry about, because I think so many people get trapped in this. I remember someone saying once, I did a self-tape over and over again, probably about 20 times. I said, why? Because every time I watched it back, my face just wasn't doing anything. I was living in the moment, but my face just wasn't moving. I looked so miserable. It's like, yeah, but were you telling the truth of your character? It's well, yeah, but I didn't look like I was speaking. It's like, well, that doesn't matter. You just got to, I think it's a trap that I've definitely got caught in it before, but thankfully I've got out of it now. But as long as you're being truthful and saying it, then that's all you need to do. Because you don't, you don't need to show that you're thinking something, because then you're not acting anymore, or you're doing it.
Then I would say, Oliver, though, I would say it's quite interesting in that, because I would say, and again, I didn't see the person's show self-tape, so it's impossible to kind of judge that particular thing. But I think there's a kind of sweet spot, which is you're not showing it in a big kind of demonstrative way, but somehow if it's not reading that there's any feeling in there, then it's finding that balance where we see, it doesn't have to look like we think, upset looks like. It could look like something different. But it's that, I think what I'm hearing is maybe, it's interesting, if the actor's connecting to it, then probably it was fine. You know what I mean? If the actor's really in connection to those feelings. But I have worked with actors where I go, what's going on for you right now? And they're like, yeah, I'm really frustrated. And I'm like, oh, interesting. You look like you haven't got a care in the world, or you look like you've neutraled out.
Yeah.
And one of the things that I like about the Meisner is this 50-50, which is I put my attention on you, I observe you, and my response is 50% as important. So it's not, sometimes because we get such a relief to be able to put your attention on someone else, we get hyper focused on the other person, and then nothing affects us because we're so focused. So you have to have a kind of soft focus and an availability to be responsive. Now, when you're on camera, you can't be huge, lots of facial, but it could be that you're just still allowing to show those little responses a little bit. If they're too internal, you just look the same. Does that make sense? So it's finding how to express without being performative or demonstrative. It's how, and for me, again, that goes back to the storytelling. It's not about being good or bad acting. It's about, are you telling the story effectively?
Yeah, because ultimately that's the key.
The job. Yeah,
that's the job. Yeah. I'm reminded of, I want to get this quote in. I was lucky enough to speak to one of my heroes, who's a director like yourself. It's called Yar Farber, and she's done again. Yes, I mentioned this many times on here. The Crucible at the Old Vic, 2014. She did King Lear at the Almeida a couple of years ago with Danny Sapani and all these amazing people. Faith Amole as well, who's also been on here. She's just, she's one of my heroes, and she's done, she did Salome at the National and everything, her work is incredible. What was I saying? Yeah, so I think at one point in our chat, she talks about how people say, I don't know how to, I can't remember how we got onto this, but she used this analogy of, okay, so if you're in a situation like you're on a plane, and you need to, and of course you're flying, of course, and you're coming into land, do I want the pilot to think of an interesting way to land the plane? Do they want to think about a way we can maybe touch down up and then come back down in to give the passenger a real kind of thrill ride, everything, to try to make it look interesting? And she's like, no, mate, just land the
And
fucking
the
plane.
play.
Just land the fucking plane. That's her words, not mine. But she was like, just land the fucking plane, okay? Right, just get us on the ground as safely as possible so we can get off this plane because I've been on here for 8 hours and I want to get off and go and have a drink. So, or I want to get home if you're traveling back, you know. But, you know, I feel like that's important. Just play it as it is, you
Well,
know.
it's the action, isn't it? I think
Yeah, play the
what she's
actions. Yeah.
saying is do the action, which is land the plane. We don't want you to do land the plane with a flourish. We just want you to do the action. And I think that's the other thing is, being clear. What's the action? What do I need? What am I doing? What do I need to do it? Do you know what I mean? Rather than just do it, rather than kind of show it, demonstrate it, go around the houses, do it. And the reality of doing, like Meisner says, the reality of doing, and I think that's, again, and I think, as we're talking, it's, as I said before, I think we've got to be very kind to ourselves, because I don't think anyone goes into a rehearsal and goes, I'm going to do a really big load of demonstrating. I think demonstrating and performative acting is really great. No one goes in thinking.
No. And if you do, you look like a fucking moron.
You don't do that. You go in going, to the best of my abilities, I want to play this part and honor it and do it well. So I think this goes right back, sort of full circle, to the start of our conversation around drama school and the kind of fear and the sense of anxiety. Part of that performative energy, demonstrative energy, comes from tension and anxiety. It comes from, I want to be good. And it's a really noble endeavor to want to do it well and to want to serve the play and want to be good. So I think one's to be very gentle with ourselves and others, rather than, oh my God, that's so performative. It's like, actually, that's a person having a go. And once then people understand that they may feel they're less interesting, they may feel they're doing too little, as you've said many times, which I think was a huge revelation to me. It's often a lot easier than we think. And I think what happens is we don't trust ease. We go, well, hold on, it can't be this easy. It must be shit. I must be suffering for my art. No pain, no gain. I must really be working at it. Otherwise, it's going to be boring or not good. And when you're in connected flow, which can feel like ease, often that's when it's at its best. But it's kind of disconcerting, because you feel like you haven't done enough work. And I think often at drama school, you feel like, I've got to get my backstory, I've got to do my research on the period, I've got to know what's in my pockets, I've got to know what I ate for breakfast, I've got to know who my in-laws are. You can't act any of that. It might be interesting in terms of an imaginative world that you start to create, that you're living within. Fantastic. Do all that work if it feels like it enriches your character and the world they inhabit. But you can't act what's in my pocket. You can't act what I had for breakfast. You can't act that my grandfather was a soldier. You can't act any of that, because all you can act is what's here right now. You and I having this chat, we're not acting what we had for breakfast and what we did yesterday and who our ancestors are and where we grew up and what happened to us in our childhood. We're just having a chat. And I think that feeling of connection and flow is what creates that feeling of ease, that feeling. So a lot of the demonstrating and the pushing comes from not trusting the moment. And I think, therefore, again, going full circle, you want to be in an environment where you feel safe to play, safe to experiment and make discoveries, safe to get it wrong, safe to be demonstrative, safe to be whatever. And then you start sort of understanding the power of that kind of in the present moment, listening and all the rest of it. But if you feel tense, I mean, I've seen, even saying to actors, can you just listen? They're like, I said, you're trying to listen now. And I said, when I'm talking to you, are you trying to listen to me or are you listening to me? No, like, I'm listening to you. I said, that's it. I said, I know, but I'm trying to do nothing. I'm trying to listen. I'm trying not to be performative. And all of those things create tension.
Yeah. Do you know, I'm just reminded of a quick story, and I just want to get your opinion on this. I heard a story from, I remember Daniel Radcliffe did an interview, and he was talking about the now late great Michael Gambon, and you know what an actor he is still. Wherever he is, Michael, just thank you for what you did. He said, look, Michael Gambon was a brilliant actor to work with, but sometimes he was a total nightmare. And it's like, why? Because he'd be trying to make me laugh all the way up to the word action, like, and to the point where I'm literally about to go into a scene and I'm trying not to laugh. And it could be any kind of scene. It could be a happy scene, a very serious scene, but I'm literally there like, shut up, shut up, shut up. Anyway, that's the gist of like the interview. But I said, well, what do you think about that? Because I think from my reading of that is that he's trying to get him to be like, mate, it's not, you don't need to think about things too much. Just relax, have a laugh, have a good time, be at ease. When we're laughing, we're not thinking about how we look or we're just enjoying the moment. Because I think that's my reading of it anyway. Like just go into a scene and just don't think about playing it so seriously. Just even if you are playing a serious scene, ironically enough, just have ease with it and just enjoy it and have fun and allow things to happen. Yeah. I mean, that's my reading
It's
of
a
it. Anyway,
really
what's
interesting
yours?
one. It's an interesting one, and again, who knows what Michael Gambon's motive was? It may well have been. I can't imagine he was trying to trip him up. I mean, I think it may well have been exactly what you're saying. I think the reason for me that I wouldn't probably advocate for doing that myself is that it can, again, even if the intention is to lighten it up, the person can start going into anxious tension around not wanting to laugh. So, but if I was, so that thing of, oh my God, I gotta laugh.
Like,
And
don't
you
laugh.
just said action, and then you literally can't breathe because you're just trying not to piss yourself. But I think what I suppose what I would say is it's akin to what I was saying about the movement that I do, which is get yourself into a state which is open, free, enjoyable, even if you're about to do a scene that's about an argument or something with an emotional weight to it, you want to be in as open and as available space. What you don't want to be necessarily is, having said that, I do think, and this has happened to me many, many times, this is where I think it's very tricky, is when you're doing what I might say, a more kind of what's the right word? What's the appropriate word? Regular kind of TV drama, that we see a lot of, the casualties, the Holbys,
Mm.
the kind of,
Emmerdale's, Coronation Street. Yeah.
the turnarounds, the ones that
Doctors. Yeah.
are, um, and sometimes the scripts can be fantastic, and sometimes they can be, if I'm honest, because I've done a lot of this stuff, they can be a little bit
Crap.
a bit shit, no, but a bit no, a bit unimaginative or a bit uncreative, and often I've obviously cornered the market on a kind of traumatized women. And often I've had to play women in tears or women with terrible news or women having a terrible time.
Mm.
And the script doesn't support the
Yeah.
the emotion. It's not imbued in the text, because this is the other thing I was thinking about. Beautiful writing has subtextual energy. It's just in it. So
Yeah.
you have to just sort of say it and the emotion comes up because it is so imbued in the text. Other scripts, you have to work super hard as an actor to make those scripts sound even remotely realistic, right? So this is the only, those would be the times when I would have to do some kind of prep. And I don't like doing it, but some kind of prep where I have to draw on something in my own experience just to get anywhere near the feeling that the scene is asking for, because it's not in the text. If someone was there before me trying to make me laugh, now, Harry Potter, I'm not saying some of the writing in that was probably great, but I would not be finding that particularly helpful, is all I'm saying. Because I know the level of concentration that I have to get to help me to get to anywhere near what I'm being asked to do by the director. I mean, I've had directors come up to me and go, can you just cry more? Can you get really upset on this?
Yeah. So how's that
And
helpful?
and to be honest, I'm experienced enough now to just go, "Oh, yeah,
Yeah.
because they're not, a lot of telly directors don't facilitate the acting anyway. It's much more, they want you to do what you want to do. And then they do all the technical stuff and direct, much more around the visuals. So I sort of have some sort of little tricks and things that work more or less, or, sometimes better than others, of how I need to prepare. But if I had someone going, in my ear, or sort of going, making me have a giggle, I'd find I would probably find that tricky.
Yeah.
So I like the idea of not being in tension and not taking things too seriously. But if you're being asked to do something that requires, then I might say, Michael, Mr. Gambon, stop trying to make me laugh. It's not happening.
Yeah. I remember speaking to Kate Godfrey on here, who's a former voice coach at the RSC, and she worked with another late great Richard Griffiths, and she would have one-on-one sessions with the actors. Like she worked on him with him on a show called The Habit of Art at the National back in 2010, which is available on National Theatre at Home, and I encourage people to watch it because it's a brilliant, brilliant show, wonderful play. It's Alan Bennett, so you can't go wrong. I mean, his quality of his writing is just oh, it's just stupendous. Yeah, I was lucky enough to do the History Boys, I think, a few years ago as well. Oh, just stupendous writing. Anyway, but she had to say to him on a couple of occasions because he just wouldn't stop cracking jokes. He was like, Richard, please, we have to do some work now, please. We have to do some work now. And it's like, oh, but he was just like, yeah, but I'm enjoying it. But the annoying thing, I think she said, like, he just kept making me laugh, and it was just like, oh,
In that environment, I'd be more like, yeah. I mean, obviously you've got to do the work. Yeah. I mean, look, I love a laugh, and I think we've got to be able to laugh. Honestly, we've got to be able to laugh, and I think hopefully my classes and where I work, there's a lot of humor and a lot of fun in them. It's certainly not taking yourself too seriously. I think it's just about, and I would totally agree that having, as I've said, having fun, laughing, enjoying, mucking around a bit in a healthy, playful way is really important. It's super important. And that doesn't mean we're not taking it seriously, because
mm,
actually all of it is about creating the right conditions to be available and free.
indeed. And that's what
So
Meisner does. Yeah.
yeah, and so I think, again, as I said, you've got to be very careful of working so hard that you work yourself into a sort of into a level of kind of anxiety and tension, and overworking characters sometimes. And this can be very, very peculiar for actors. They can find access very quickly to something. I've seen actors read a part. Of course they have to do more detailed work, but they could almost immediately, they're kind of channeling something or accessing, it's just coming to them really quickly. And then I've seen them, because they feel that's too easy, overwork it and overwork it and overwork it to the point that that character then becomes so bound by overwork that
Mm,
all that sort of instinctive, fresh, exciting energy that came in the first few rehearsals just gets kind of bled out, and you're left with something very different. And I think all you can do is keep refining the thing. If you found a lot of immediate detail or immediate access to something, then your job is to keep refining it, not to keep trying to sort of overwork it.
mm. Yeah,
I mean, if you
definitely.
think about television film, you don't have the luxury of rehearsal anyway a lot of the time.
No,
So
no.
you're, in a sense, required to come up with this stuff quickly.
Yeah, more than anything. Yeah.
Mm.
But it's enjoyable nevertheless.
Mhm.
That's Kate. Honestly, I could have you here for another 2 hours just talking about Meisner and all these different examples. Honestly, but you've been very generous with your time this morning, and
Pleasure.
yeah, yeah, but no, but I'd love to have you back. There's probably more conversations I'd love to have with you about the rehearsal room and more of Meisner stuff as well. So, I'd love to do more of that with you in the future.
Great.
So, yeah, sounds good. I've just got two more questions left for you
Yeah.
today. Two quick fire questions for every guest. So, first of all, what would you say was a bit of advice you wish you heard when you were starting out?
Which is what I've already said in the podcast, to understand that my worth as an actor was not determined by whether I was employed by the industry or not.
Hmm.
That my acting, the actor part of me, the creative part of me, exists regardless of whether the industry wanted me in any particular moment or not. So that feeling of saying, I'm an actor, I can own it, and it doesn't, it's not contingent on what are you in.
Mm.
So that you can really own your creative artistry, and yeah, know that's, and don't feel you need to kind of justify it by being employed or not.
Yeah, no, that's a good one. I like that. And finally, today, what would you say has been an experience or experiences you've had in your career up to now that you'll never, ever forget?
Oh gosh, I've had quite a few. I think what springs to mind is taking the plunge and doing a one-woman show. So my show, The Old House, which is available online. I'm going to do something with it soon because it's about me and my mum, who my mum had Alzheimer's
Mm.
and died a couple of years ago. And I wrote a play about me and her, and I play both parts.
Oh,
And I
wow.
think, obviously, the subject matter,
Yeah.
but also saying, okay, I'm going to do this. I think for me was quite a turning point because it kind of gave me a sense of confidence in my own. Although I'd written and co-written before, and I was very proud of those pieces, I think it was a sort of it was stepping into the unknown
Mm.
and saying, I want to do it, I'm going to do it. Oh, I've done it. I take years creating shows, so I'm not like one of those people and pops them out. That
Mm.
I really take a long time. But I think having done it, I think it gave me, yeah, I think it gave me a sense of a bit linked to what I was saying, my own artistry and my who I am as an actor in a way that it didn't really need the validation from the outside. It felt like it was a really important step. So that's what that and but I'm proud of it. It's a piece of work I'm proud of. Um, I think discovering the Meisner stood out because that was such a turning point for me.
Yeah.
Uh, and I did the other show that I really loved doing was something called 4 minutes 12 seconds, which was at Hampstead downstairs, and then it had a transfer to the West End, and it was a big play by James Fritz, and I
Mm.
hadn't been on stage for years because I'd had a kid, and it was one of the things I thought I was going to heart attack when I waited in the wings because I was a character I was top to bottom, never got off the stage for an hour and a half and just blah, 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 blah. And I literally thought my heart was going to come out. But that was a real turning point of getting back on the stage, having done a lot of television. It was just great, and it was a brilliant piece of work, and it was a really exciting piece of work to do. So that was one of those really that was a highlight in terms of a job. Yeah.
Brilliant. Yeah. I want to see that show now, The Old House. I want to see it.
Oh well, I'll send you. What I'm trying to do, and again, it's like organizing, and I really want to do this. I want to get because I've got this digital version. I want to put it out there and ask people to, sort of on really quite cheap. But I'm going to then donate a percentage, which I've just got to decide, to the Alzheimer's charities.
Mm.
Particularly interested in one called Reimagining Dementia, which is a sort of creative collective. Um, so I will send you the link,
No,
Oliver.
please. I'd love to.
Yeah,
Thank you.
yeah.
Yeah, I'd love to see it. Yeah, and some of the links again, the Actor Centre and everything, which we'll put down below so people can go and support that and read more about it and get an idea of the great work you're doing with that as well. And of course, you offer classes as well, and so
At the New Actor Centre. So I teach at the New Actor Centre on a
yeah,
Monday evening or Tuesday evening, depending on bank holidays. But I do that regularly and text classes as well. And then
okay,
I'm part-time. I'm at Arts Ed sort of, but that's obviously for them. But yeah,
yeah,
but
perfect.
I have a teaching for professional actors kind of ongoing.
Fantastic, cool. Yeah, and I'll put your website down below as well, so people can read more about that as well, and go where they need to go to book you, etc. Kate, thank you so much for your time today. I really do appreciate it. It's been lovely to talk about Meisner again and to get more of an idea of the work you're doing behind the Actor Centre. And again, best of luck with that and everything. And I wish you, Harry, and the team all the best for it. And let's get it back up and running and back where it needs to be. And let's build a fucking community again
Yeah,
and put our
exactly.
phones down. Easier said than done, I know, but there's great work which you're doing as well. So thank you very much for your time. I really do appreciate
Thank
it.
you. Great to talk to you. I will send you those links.
Yeah, please do. I look forward to it. Just hang on. I'll finish the recording. We'll have a debrief that we can shoot
Yeah.
back to our Sunday. And brilliant, guys. Thank you for watching. Thank you for listening. This has been the Uncensored Critic podcast. I'll be back very, very, very soon. And Kate, until next time, thank you so much.
Thank you very much.